Hey guys, Quiv, the lazy geek here. So through the magic of editing, I'm back in another room. But what we're going to do is we're going to keep going with that imaging session from last time, where for the moment we've actually looked at the equipment and connected N.I.N.A to that equipment. And from now on, we're actually going to control that equipment, set up a sequence and start that sequence. We'll also have a look at the Meridian flip and what happens when I end the sequence. So see you back on the roof. Okay, cool. So we have, I think our equipment is pretty much connected. The only thing that's not connected is the guider. I haven't launched PhD2 yet. Anyway, so now we can actually decide which target we're going to look at. I'm going to try, I don't know whether it's going to be visible right now from this angle, but let's try. No, it should be close. Yes, it is close to zenith. So everything should be fine for M106. And, you know, I can just slew to it. Or I could go into the framing assistant. I could go to file. I'm going to put M106 here because I know I'm in the vicinity of that. I just want to get the exact same framing that pops up the approximate coordinates for my target. Now I can actually load my image and the plate solving should work properly. Okay, validate. Now we're plate solving via SharpCap, and here we are. It's plate solved, it's centered, everything's fine. So that's a way to simply frame on an existing picture. You want to have, if possible, approximate coordinates in here. Then you can load the image from file, as I did here. And once you're done, you can slew to that, and you can add or replace a a sequence target. What I'm going to do is the simple thing: go to Sky Atlas, M106. I'm going to slew to it first because I like slewing and I like watching this move. Yes, I know I'm a bit stupid, but let's do this. So let's slew. And now my equipment is slewing to the targets. Of course, I forgot to remove the dust cap on this, so let me remove the dust cap. Cool, here we are. So we're really close to zenith. Okay. And I'm also going to go ahead and set it as sequence target so I don't forget. And here we are, it's set as sequence target M106. I like, before doing the sequence, to also do a plate solve. So I can go to the imaging tab, plate solving, which can be achieved by pressing this little plate solving button here. I want to sync to re-slew to target, and my exposure time will be 10 seconds. Now let's see with that light whether it can actually work. I've never tried this with this light on, but let's give it a go. Okay, so it is exposing for 10 seconds. Hopefully my focus is still fine. We'll see. I like to do that before the sequence just to make sure that everything is fine. And yes, I don't know, ASTAP, which is the plate solver, the main plate solver I'm using, which is free, which is open source, which is developed by an awesome guy. It's such a good tool, and you can see the scope slewed closer to the target. It now is waiting for my scope settle time. For this particular mount, I recommend a settle time, which is in the options equipment here, of at least 10 seconds, because otherwise you might see streaks instead of stars. Maybe 15 is actually better, but here you can see that it slew the second time. Now we are within tolerance. Yeah, we are 43 arc seconds away. I'd say this is fine. So we're already good there. I want to just have a look at the image, and so we're surprisingly close to focus. You can see that very washed out image because of the this. One of the things as well, by the way, if you're in a light polluted area, you may want to go into the imaging tab here and change the auto stretch factor to 0.15 or maybe even 0.1, but I'm in Tokyo, it's 0.15, and black clipping to maybe minus 1.5. If you're using an OSC camera like I am, so color camera, you want to debayer the image, you want to use debayered HFR and unlinked stretch, which basically does the same as an unlinked STF and PixInsight, if you're familiar with PixInsight. And in the series, by the way, I'll end up by processing the images that I'm taking here, so you can see my processing workflow as well. Cool. So these two can be important. Anyway, let's try the autofocus. I'm not super confident the autofocus will work fine with this big light, but this is something that I can do as part of the sequence. The plate solving, the slewing, the autofocus at the start of the sequence. I'm old school. I like doing it myself, and the sequence will do it again on top of that. Okay, so let's start the autofocus, and it's exposing 5 seconds per frame. It takes a first frame at its current position, so it has a baseline of what star shapes, what HFR it was getting at first, and then it will move out using the EAF here to then start building a curve. And yeah, we can see the autofocus is sorry, the HFR is getting higher, so we're on the left hand side of the curve, where usually we want to actually be on the right hand side. So I was actually further away from focus than I expected. So it's a good thing we're running this this autofocus, and with a tube like that, which is aluminum, I want to make sure that I'm going to focus at least like once an hour. Otherwise, there is a significant focus shift with temperatures throughout the night. Okay, my little autofocus sequence is doing great. It's now going to the other side of the curve. We're seeing like the points lining up. I can see that I have my parabolic or hyperbolic curve fitting, another thing I added to N.I.N.A. And I also have trend lines fitting as well. And the autofocus is finished. That was quick. Huh, that's good, it worked great. It seems that, yeah, I'm not sure whether I'm using, let's see what autofocus thing I'm using, trends and parabolic. This is very interesting. Like for most autofocusers, I'd say hyperbolic or parabolic work well. For any time that you get a system where you have something that's not quite symmetrical in the curves, and I can go into that in another video later, is you can see here my curve is not quite symmetrical, and that will tend to mean that the curve fitting itself will tend to put the best focus on one side of the curve, but the trend lines will tend to intersect on the other side of the curve, and when you combine both, you get the perfect point for the focus. So that's why I have those two selected at once to really get the perfect focus point for my particular setup. Okay, cool. So we've done autofocus. I know that everything is working. Again, it's not really necessary, but this is what I've done. Okay, now let's go to the sequence tab. Okay, so the sequence. Before we start the sequence, I'm actually going to launch PhD2. And now that we are on target, even though PhD2 will be stopped and everything, again, it could be fully automated. I'm just old school. I like to do all of that myself. Otherwise, I feel like I haven't accomplished anything, and N.I.N.A has done everything. Okay, so now I'm connected to both the mount and the camera. I'm going to start taking exposures. Today is not windy, so I'll go to 3 seconds. I'll select something at random. It's saturated, I don't care. PhD2 will reselect the star later on. Hopefully it will work with that big light there. So let's start guiding. You'll see the guiding spike all over the place because I'm here. This balcony is actually wood under me, so anytime I move, this moves too. So that's why I am usually inside by the time I'm doing that. Cool, so we are guiding, everything's fine. And now I'm going to go to my sequence. I'm going to say I want to start guiding, I want to slew to target, I want to center target, and I want to autofocus on start. Plus, I want to autofocus after a certain time has elapsed, and for me it's going to be 60 minutes. And I want to have an autofocus after HFR increase of 10%. And with that, I'm going to put my exposure time at 30 seconds. I'm really going to turn off the light once I really start the sequence, and we're going to put the total number of frames. I don't know, how much time do I have? Until 3:20 a.m. or so. Yeah, in Japan in summer the sunrise is super early. Let's put 500. 500 would put me up to 2:48 a.m., which I think is perfect. I'm gonna make sure that I dither every maybe 3 frames. The filter, I will select it to L just to make sure that I have the right filter. And maybe I'm gonna just lower a bit the plate solving exposure time to 10 seconds so we don't wait forever. And now I'm going to start the sequence. Okay, so let's click on start, and we get this warning message that has my back, the pre-sequence checklist. I added a lot of pre-sequence checks to N.I.N.A. So no, I don't want to start the sequence. We're going to connect the guider first. By the way, I'm going to double check that the camera was able to cool to minus 10 degrees, and it did, no problem there. And I'm going to start the sequence for reals now. Cool, start. Okay, so it stops guiding, it will slew to target now. Obviously it's already on target, so there's not much to slew to, but it would do that automatically, you know, if I hadn't basically done my own thing there. I'm getting pretty good guiding tonight, so we're plate solving, we can see the error distance is fine. So we are centered, everything's fine. And now we're going to do another auto sequence run. I know that autofocus run, I know that I don't need it, but you know, now it's part of the sequence. Sometimes, like, it takes me quite some time to start the sequence after I've done my original adjustments. Maybe like my actual intended target was behind that wall on my right, or anything else. So the focus could have shifted with the temperature, and so I want to make sure that the telescope, everything is in focus. Okay, so you can see that it's actually running the autofocus perfectly fine. My curve looks right, you know, perfectly fine at this stage. We're gonna let it do its thing, and once it's done, we'll see that the sequence will actually start. Okay, we're in focus. Now it's taking the last exposure to make sure that we have focus that's at least as good. This thing, calculated HFR, actual HFR 25%, ignore it. I'm not going to go into the explanation right now. It makes sense, but it's not completely necessary. Let's have a look. By the way, we can see we're exposing. The sequence is working there. PhD2 is probably guiding again. It selected this wonderful star there that I'm not sure I agree with, but I'm sure I'm going to get a better SNR once I turn off this light. And we can look at my imaging tab with the image there. Not much visible with this light, but yeah, there's something here. There's something here, which is good. And so this is my my starting sequence kind of workflow. So I hope it's been useful, that you've seen it with the equipment. If you have any questions, any topic you want me to cover in further videos, and I'm going to go into my focus settings, my Meridian flip settings, all of the idiosyncrasies of my setup and how I worked around them in N.I.N.A. I'll also show you another of the setups that I have for portability. And I'll cover that in other videos. By the way, we can see we're very close to the Meridian, so I can actually go to Equipment, Telescope, And you can see we have Meridian in 20 minutes here. So you know that there's a Meridian flip coming. And just for the heck of it, I'll be showing you this Meridian flip in 20 minutes. So that's it for now. So thanks for watching. And yeah, I'll see you in 20 minutes. Okay. And now we are seeing the actual preparation to the flip in N.I.N.A itself. So you can see that my exposure time is actually 30 seconds. And there's also a tolerance time of 1 minute that's hard-coded in N.I.N.A. So if an exposure ends and N.I.N.A sees that there's less than 1 minute plus the exposure time, the planned exposure time, until the Meridian flip, it will actually wait for the flip, which is what it's doing right now. And you can see that it will pause the autoguider, which has already been done. Yes, it is paused. We can see that it will pass the Meridian next. It will do the flip, recenter, and select a new guide star in PhD2, resume the autoguider, and wait for a few seconds, the settle time from the Meridian flip options. So let's just wait another 20 seconds or so, and we should be seeing the actual Meridian flip here. Hopefully the telescope doesn't bump me in the shoulder. We'll see. And ignition sequence started. Almost there. Cool. And here the scope is flipping. Everything seems to be working fine. So we can see this in N.I.N.A, the flipping scope option, not option, but status update here. I really love this UI. I mean, the guy who created N.I.N.A is a wizard. Okay, so we can see the telescope is gradually getting into place, and then it should do the recentering. Now, I sometimes have trouble with the recentering after the flip. Sometimes it goes to astrometry.net rather than ASTAP, or ASTAP fails and it falls back to astrometry.net. In other news, the telescope did not hit me, which is good, although we're quite close. Okay, and now the scope is settling. Let's wait for that to be over. And now we're going to do the plate solving. I'm trying to stay fairly still so that we don't get star streaks. It's possible that I mess up the image by moving around. And yeah, I probably did. You can see ASTAP failed. So now it's going to do via astrometry.net. I'm going to close this error message here. We're going to wait for astrometry.net to be done. Okay, and we can see that the solving has been done. The telescope was not inside tolerance, so we are not quite on target. So we are reslewing the telescope to target. And we'll see, we should have a second round of plate solving to make sure that we are indeed on target after this flip. And we'll see whether we actually get ASTAP to work this time, or whether we'll go through astrometry.net. ASTAP worked. It confirmed that we are now on target. So we are selecting a guide star in PhD2, except that PhD2 could not select a guide. Ooh. It's the light. It's the light, poor PhD2. I'm so sorry. Let's put you to 0.5 seconds. No. Yes. No. Oh well, so I messed this up, so that's too bad. So you will not see the end of the actual flip sequence, because this bright light is now shining into PhD2, so we can see that we run into an error. Let's see what N.I.N.A thought of it. It's still trying to resume the guiding, but it's going to fail. So I'm just, obviously this would not happen in a normal sequence. I'll just close PhD2, and maybe that will make N.I.N.A realize, like, oh, you cannot resume guiding. And it does. So now N.I.N.A is back to imaging. So it is actually getting a bit like hazy upstairs. So I am actually going to end this sequence because the data I'm getting, I'm getting terrible data because I have this. Even if I'm turning it off, I'm in Tokyo, and when there's a haze, meh. So I'm just going to show you what happens at the end of a sequence with N.I.N.A. So in the options, I found that end of sequence, which is here under imaging sequence. You can see we have three options: park mount when sequence ends. So this will park this mount. It will work for mounts that do not have a parking sequence as well, in which case it will just point the telescope to the celestial pole. Or close to it, you'll see that the RA axis is not perfect. But so you shouldn't worry about that if you have a telescope that cannot park. It will also warm the camera as the sequence ends. And you have an option as well to close the cover when the sequence ends. This is only for fancy, like flat, or like motorized covers, including like flat panels that can actually, you know, close on your telescope, which are awesome. But I don't think they exist for 8-inch, unfortunately. Otherwise, I would definitely add it. But yes, so this is like the end of sequence options, and what happens is when all of those exposures, oh look at my images with this, anyway, when all of those exposures are done, it will reach the end of sequence, or I can just cancel the sequence, and it will ask me, in this case, it would do it automatically if the sequence, I let the sequence run its course, but now it's asking me, like, do you want to run the end of sequence options? And yes, I do. And you'll see the telescope is now parking as expected. And if I go into the camera tab, we'll see that once that the target temperature is now slowly changing. Right now the target temperature is 9 degrees. And the ZW driver will slowly make it reach that. Once it gets close to 9 degrees, the target temperature will become something like 8 degrees, etc., etc. We are now fully parked. The sequence is ended. I'll wake up, and in the morning, I'll go to my balcony and see this waiting for me. I can just put the dust cover on, the telegizmo cover on with the desiccant, and I'm all good. So this is why N.I.N.A is so awesome. It automates everything, and in my opinion, even though it's free, it does it better than many of the commercial solutions out there. So thank you for watching again, and hopefully I'll go further into this series with more details on N.I.N.A and also my processing workflow. Thank you, and see you later.